Thank everybody for joining us. You should know that our volunteer corps, our campaign volunteer corps, has more than doubled. So the people in this room, you guys are not it. As you know, we didn't give a lot of lead time to come to the training, and there are a lot of things happening today. So I just wanted you to know that you are part of a 40-plus team. We have people who have never done this before. We have people like Carolyn and Ed and others in the room who have come back after having been involved before and are joining us again, and we have people who've just been sticking it out all along. And so we really, really appreciate you being here and all the efforts that we know are going to go into having a very successful campaign this year. I also really want to thank Joyce and Babette and Max and all the other staff who put this day together and this morning together to give you some tools and some motivation to move forward. So you're about to embark on a mission, that of offering your friends, colleagues, and fellow community members an opportunity to do a mitzvah, to foster and sustain Jewish life in our community and around the world through a gift to the annual campaign. An opportunity to do a mitzvah. I realize it's a funny way to ask people to give up their hard-earned treasure. However, I encourage you to shift your thinking, and that's really what today is all about. I encourage you both as a donor, which will ask you to think about yourselves as donors, and as a campaign volunteer, to re-envision the Federation annual campaign, not as an obligation to be met or a task to be accomplished, sometimes begrudgingly, but as a chance to make a smart investment and help others to do the same. To make an investment that is a real and tangible impact in our community here in Ann Arbor, in Israel, and throughout the world. Our tradition has a lot to say about tzedakah. Two perspectives I think are relevant to your roles as enablers of this important mitzvah. One is from Daniel: those who turn the many to tzedakah shall shine like the stars. The other is from the Shulchan Aruch: if a person convinces another person to give, their reward is greater than when they give on their own. You are magnifiers of the mitzvah of tzedakah, and you should be thinking of yourself in that way. During Mark's presentation, when you start making your calls and setting your appointments to have meaningful face-to-face conversations with as many people as possible, think about what your role really is. You are not a schnorrer, you are not a solicitor, and I hope you've noticed that we've been calling you campaign volunteers. You are someone who gives others an opportunity to do a mitzvah. You are a proud campaign volunteer who plays a crucial role in ensuring the vitality and sustainability of our Jewish community. And with that, I'll call on Babette to introduce our speaker.
We have a very committed volunteer helping us out here.
Thank you very much. What Eileen said, I thank you very much. Have a good day. All right, first of all, it's really nice to be here. At exactly 10 o'clock last week, I was waiting for the storm to hit. I was in Orlando, Florida. We had evacuated from Tampa because now I'm a practicing attorney as well. I can't figure out a way to either make a living writing or do what you did and somehow retire. I thought maybe I was going to need a job as an attorney in Ann Arbor, but nonetheless, literally we evacuated last week to my parents' house in Bradenton, and the storm took a little bit of a left, so my sister and wife freaked out. Oh my God, that's on tape. Please, let's delete that part. My wonderful sister, my beautiful wife, decided in the best interest of our family to leave. So we left and we went to Orlando, which still got a lot of the storm. And so last Monday, I wasn't sure, I think I tried to message Eileen that I don't know if I'm coming or not. I mean, I'm not sure if I have a house or not and all those things. So we were pretty lucky in terms of all of that. So really it is a pleasure to be here. I feel like I've had a full weekend. I came with my wife and our 2-year-old. We went to Dr. Steve's house for Shabbos dinner on Friday night, which was wonderful. I didn't want to leave. My wife made me leave again. But that's twice. Honey, I hope you never watch this video. And Eileen and her husband were there. And I have worked hard with Eileen and Max to try to make this kind of energetic and something that's special and something that's a little bit meaningful. I'm not sure if we'll have too much Israeli singing, Steve, or any crying. But nonetheless, I want to talk today in my time about empowerment training. I call it empowerment training, solicitation training. It's like a vernacular of words, right? And we talk about like the card or the this or the that. We're kind of using the wrong vernacular. I talk about the donor. I talk about empowerment training, things like that. Does anybody know the mission of your federation? This is our mission. Can somebody stand with better eyes? Can you read that for us?
Our federation fosters Jewish communal life through the spirit of tzedakah, righteousness, and tikkun olam, social justice. The federation's mandate is to initiate, to coordinate, and to preserve activities which strengthen Jewish life locally, in Israel, and throughout the world.
Okay, that's beautiful. So I don't know if that's something we should always have on all of our material or always think about and talk about. One of the things that, first of all, it's been a great setup and all that stuff, but when I'm now 52 years old, I think I'm still 51, but I think that I forgot to tell Eileen and Max that I don't need these name tags anymore. I need those big placards because it is no longer capable of actually reading your name. So Sam, I apologize. I'm Mark. I can see you because you're so close. I can see right now. So in terms of our empowerment training this morning, we're going to talk about why are we here. And that's kind of like we're talking about, like telling the story, our Jewish story. We heard a little bit about that kind of going around the room. Lessons of leadership, because really, young or old, I think that's who you are. You have to think about yourself as a leader in your community. And Steve, I know that you've taken the reins. I know you've done this so many times. Is it Steve? Does I have the right name?
Yeah.
I can't see a darn thing. Yeah. So, but my point is that isn't it nicer to have 40 people around the room, and isn't it nicer to have a coach here and be by yourself? You know, and we really do talk about the idea of these in-person meetings or these face-to-face Jewish conversations. And I understand if you have 100 people you're trying to talk to, maybe that's not possible with everybody. But if you do a little bit more than you did last year, and you think about the experience a little bit more than just a call and just getting the gift, and really what you're giving the person, I think that we're all successful. Tools and techniques, developing donors, the heart-to-heart. I can't stand calling it, quote, the solicitation. I call it the Jewish conversation, the heart-to-heart. Again, just words that I use in terms of, we'll try it together. Okay, change, perfect. So why are we here? Like, so what are we doing here? Okay, change.
Just look at me now.
All right, if I smile, I don't know. So what's your Jewish story? I think that it's really two parts about who we are Jewishly, kind of where do we come from a little bit, what's in our, what do you call it, our neshama, right, that makes us want to help out, and since 1968, you know, be on some board or other for a nonprofit organization. So what did you eat for the first time? We had Shabbos dinner for the first time. Literally, I didn't want to leave Steve's house. I gave him a hug goodbye. I think maybe I scared him a little bit, but you know, having an Israeli wife, I told my wife, when people invite you over, they really want you to come. Sometimes, like we lost power. I invited like 5 people over to my house. I pretty much wanted them to come over and stay with me for a few days, but I'm not saying the same way that I felt being warmed and welcomed into your house. So I'm coming back maybe next Shabbos. We'll talk about it. For Michigan State game maybe. So I'm not going to bring my 2-year-olds so I can stay for the whole game. But what else? A little bit more in terms of this, and then I'll tell you my Jewish story, and just to get you thinking about who we are and the connections. I mean, there must be something in your life. Do you remember, like, did anybody, you know, when we were trying to free Soviet Jews? Did anybody go to the march, you know, in Washington D.C.? You know, do you remember when Sharansky came in 1986? You know, he left. You know, when he came to Israel and made it to the Kotel. I mean, I'm sure that you remember. And again, I think that when we raise money, we're raising money for all of these great causes. Sometimes it's easy to say, in a year of crisis in Israel, in a year of this or that. And sometimes that's fine and that's important. For example, like in Houston, and maybe in South Florida, where we stepped up and take care of our Jewish family, which we could not do unless we had, quote, communal giving. But what else in terms of your Jewish story, about who you are? Has everybody been to Israel, or most of us been to Israel? Have you had that opportunity, right? And if I wish that we could have our Jewish training, have you ever been to the House Promenade, where you could kind of, you know, you go and you welcome and you see you can overlook, you know what I mean? So wouldn't it be so nice for me to look at Carol and have our Jewish conversation, and Carol would be looking at Jerusalem. Carol, so why are you involved? Why do you care so much about being Jewish? Carol, the Kotel, just saying.
Carol was a volunteer in the Israeli army.
What? As I was saying, you're
Yes,
perfect.
Carol
right.
was a volunteer.
So my point is that that's obviously a big part of your Jewish journey, right? I mean, that's something that's inside of you. What else? And I know that I'm stopping at 12 no matter what, because I have a plane to catch, and I think I said that's my time. I'll tell you a little bit about my Jewish story, and then we'll come back. From the FSU to Poughkeepsie, where he married my great-grandmother. They took the train, they had enough money to get to Charleston. So I used to walk to shul, the Orthodox shul in Charleston on Rutledge Avenue with my great-grandfather. He sat in the same seat for like over 60 years, the second bench on the right. And when we were getting close to my bar mitzvah, which was 52 minus 13, if somebody wants to do the math, you guys are in college school, I don't remember, 38 maybe years. One day I can remember him saying, Mama Gussie and I are going to make a gift to you. And I said, of course, Hineni, here I am. But no, we're going to make a gift to the Charleston Jewish Federation, to the Charleston Jewish community. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't sound quite as good, but you know. By making a gift to the Charleston Jewish Federation in my honor, we're helping Jews in Charleston, we're helping Jews in Israel, we're helping Jews all over the world. And that I can remember in terms of in my life. Now my parents, if they were here, they would talk to you about the importance in my life of the Jewish Day School, which I'm sure it was important. But for me, I can remember resonating just being with my great-grandfather. Now, in terms of telling a story, to pause for a second, anytime we tell a story, I think it's important when you share your stories and the meaningful things in your life to the people that you're speaking with. But try to make what we call the bridge, right? The bridge to a Federation community program, a bridge to something that we do and something that we touch here, some of the work that we do maybe in Israel or overseas. So if you're telling your story, for example, about serving in the Israeli, what did you say, as a volunteer for the Israeli army? So maybe we talk about the Lone Soldier program that goes on now and how we as a Federation help fund the Lone Soldier program through our gifts through the Jewish Agency and the Satnut. Okay. Through my life, in terms of my Jewish legacy and story, I think Camp Blue Star, my parents met at Camp Blue Star in Hendersonville, North Carolina. So I went there for 11 years to find my Beshert, and I found Buckus, I think is the church. But I had a great time. But for me, that was so important in my life. I went to college at Tulane University. I spent my junior year at Har Tzofim at Mount Scopus, Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And I always wanted to meet refuseniks, but my father wouldn't let me, when I was in college, go by myself. So in 1988, I took a law school class in Moscow, what was then Leningrad in Poland. And every night I would leave and I met refusenik families. And I talk about, you know, parts of my life. So this was a gentleman who, of course, was a physicist, lost his job as a physicist. He applied, his daughter then applied, so they were second-generation refuseniks. The story goes that eventually he had to divorce his wife so that the wife and the daughter can move to Israel. I never saw him again. I tried to track down the wife years later. We talk about just in terms of something that's so fulfilling. You know, he took out like the Johnny Walker Red, not the blue. There is no Johnny Walker blue in Leningrad, but he took out the Johnny Walker Red. It was so hot there, and the fact that I'm talking to some strange man who I never met before, and I felt more of a connection. You know, you could still feel it in terms of my Jewish journey. Then my years in cabinet took me all over the Jewish world. And we think about the money that we raised. You know, we always hear that quote, you may never see their faces, you may never hear their voices, but oh, have you have changed their lives, right? So this is a Jewish summer camp somewhere in Kharkov in the Ukraine, right? This was a camp that used to make missiles that were fired by Iraq onto Israel, you know, was that in the 80s, right? And now it's a Jewish summer camp led by the Jewish Agency for Israel. And these are Olim that I met from Buenos Aires. You know, all these kids came from Buenos Aires years ago. And I talk about my Jewish story about, these are the people, I still keep in contact with him. I was at her wedding, you know, a few years ago. She lives in Jerusalem now. He's a good friend of mine. He lives in Tel Aviv, still single, and looking for a nice Jewish girl in Tel Aviv. But in terms of my Jewish story, I always try to tell people, when you were thinking about the things in your life that are meaningful, we talk about people giving. Why do people give money? Steve, why do people really give? They give what? If they really understand, and if they really care about it, right? I may call Steve and say, Steve, it's really important to me that I'm supporting the Ann Arbor Cancer Association because my mother had breast cancer. Can you give me $500? You may do it perfectly. You may call me and say, Mark, we're doing something for the school. Can you give me $500? And that may be fine. All right, that's okay. But I think people really give when what? When they understand, when they feel what we do, like Ed was talking about in terms of how we help people in Ann Arbor and all over the Jewish world. And so when I think about your story, I tried to tailor, for example, my thing. So who has kids in the day school here, right? Kindergarten to fifth. Who has kids, or who has children maybe that went to the school, right? So maybe if I was saying that you had a great experience, I may really talk to you about that because that's what you want to talk about, right? We talk about like hot buttons and things like that. So maybe my story would be tailored to my Jewish day school experience. And Sam, tell me about your kids and how they experienced the Jewish day school. And talk about the things that are important to Sam. As opposed to saying, you know, that's fine, but I really could care less about the Jewish day school. I want to talk to you about Israel. Well, that may not be, you know, finding common ground, right? We always talk about the Jewish conversation. And I'll get to the point about where to have it. Is it better to have it like in a sterile environment, like at a Starbucks or, you know, in this building here? Or is it better to have it maybe at Carol in your house where what? I have the advantage of all of your pictures of your family. I have the advantage of knowing kind of where you've been because I can see your life on the wall and things like that, right? To learn a little bit more about what motivates you, right? And talking about knowing the donor and things like that.
So their house as opposed to my house.
Yes.
Well, I would think so, right? I mean, maybe it's easier to them to come to your house, right? But go to their house, you know, as an attorney, if I can take a sworn statement in my office, that's one thing. But if I can take a sworn statement at Steve's house and talk about something. The other day I took a, what's called a deposition of a doctor, I don't know, just a few weeks ago. And I could see that he was Jewish, and the defense lawyer was not Jewish. And I was saying to the doctor, because I could see a picture of Israel, something like that, doctor, happy and healthy New Year. I know it's a little early. He was like, oh, Mark, happy New Year, what synagogue you go to? The defense lawyer was like looking like we were like really from Mars. And I'd already made common ground with the defense expert, literally because I was in his office, right? So it benefited me exponentially in terms of, I think, the testimony, right? Because we made a little bit of common in Tel Aviv and maybe even in Jerusalem. So I spent a week at an absorption center in Ashdod. You know, my mom was a little nervous, and I knew you had 30 seconds to get to the shelter. I didn't stay at the absorption center, I stayed at the hotel. But to me, it was kind of helped me move along in terms of, you know, get back to my Jewish journey. And then we think about America. You said you're from St. Louis, right? I mean, this is a picture of the St. Louis Cemetery. When was this, like a year or so ago, right? And this was, I was in Paris last summer, and I went to the grocery store. My wife was like, why do we have to go to the suburbs to buy something from a grocery store? I do not understand. I'm like, that's what we do. We go to the suburbs, we have to take a train or whatever we did to the suburbs, because that's where these 4 Jewish guys died, just because they were Jewish, shopping for Shabbos in a Jewish grocery store, right? And then, even more disgusting than all of that, I mean, although nobody died, so maybe close to disgusting, can you imagine a Nazi flag in Charlottesville, Virginia, you know, but a month or so ago, in terms of kind of who we are? And I tell you what, maybe other people care, right? Maybe other people are involved and want to stop this. But if we don't stand up and support our Jewish community, support AIPAC, do the things, and we are involved. The National JFNA does all kinds of things in terms of working with other organizations, helping lobby, you know, in terms of legislation against discrimination on Capitol Hill. We are involved. We talk about knowing your product, right? On a separate note, although we are being filmed and I am a volunteer, there are no good Nazis, just I'm saying. There are no good Nazis. I don't know, I want to talk about 45. I won't leave it alone, Steve, I apologize. You know, I'm just saying. I'm just saying, there are no good Nazis. And I think that all of those kind of bring me to why I'm really involved now and why I think I care so much. This is Jack. This is Pablo. Pablo, remember, when we met the 2 cats behind and our 7 fish, it cost me $150 for an automatic fish feeder because my wife did not want the fish to die. So we had cat food, litter boxes everywhere in our house, but the 3 dogs left. So this is Jack. Jack never sat in a stroller for us, but for some reason he wanted to sit in a stroller. So I think the idea of, I've never said the Shema so much. We try to say the Shema every night. I never said Kiddush on, you know, on pretty much every Friday night, and the candles, which I appreciate you allowing us to do at your house, Steve, Dr. Steve. So I think this is why I'm involved now. I see no end in sight in terms of my working as a lawyer. Now that I have a 2-year-old, I can see there is nothing that I see at the end of the road. Please, I know that the first time I was in the Soviet Union, with the, you know, what was then UJA, right? Remember UJA, UJC, UJA? And I would go to, I remember her name was Bertha, and I think it was in Vilnius or in Minsk, and you know, you talk about those boxes the JVC would bring, and to actually open up the cupboard and to see the box there. It's one thing to see here, you know, and we do that tool. You take out, Carol, what you think that we can't afford this year. Should we take out her milk? Should we take out her medicine? But to go there and to see the, you know, those metal Hanukkah menorah, what do they call them? You know, they're talking about the menorahs and the candles, or to see the sugar or the flour, to think that we did that, it's very powerful and it's really meaningful. And I think that part of what we have to do is we have to take the neshama in us and kind of understand that we are really giving people an opportunity to do a mitzvah. Yeah, so you're doing a double, that's fine, right? And that's good for us. But we know about how important it is. But by having a Jewish conversation, and God willing that, you know, we could talk Ben, right? Sam. So Sam and I could have a Jewish conversation. We could really talk. I'm showing him the respect by meeting him in person. I understand the phone is easier. And that's why my wife's name is Lindsay. And I hope, please take no offense to that, I would never meet a Sally. I never marry a Sally, never date a Sally. You know why? Because Sally stands for what? Same as, just put me down, same as last year, Eileen. So, that's why. Finally, I got one good thing. It's been 20 minutes I've been talking.
Lindsay means more than last year.
Yeah, more than last year, something like that.
That's great.
You have no idea. Well, maybe you do. Yes, sir?
So one thing we did, I don't remember how many years ago this was, but we actually had a short film of going to the Russian community with the boxes, trudging up the stairs, saying to a woman there, when's the last time you've been down the stairs? And her answer was, never. I mean, this is where I live, this is my life, and opening the box was just very powerful.
And can you imagine that only because she's Jewish does she get support from the Jewish community?
Right.
Only because she's Jewish does she get visitors? Only because she's Jewish do we say to our old elderly, which is still, the numbers I don't know, and I think it's important to quote, know our product, 130-some thousand elderly Jews, over 100,000, teens and young children still in the Soviet Union. And here, even now, how do people learn our Judaism in the United States? We learn it from where? We learn it from our grandfathers and our grandmothers, to our parents, to our children, from the day school. There, I think they still learn it from the children, to the parents, to the grandparents, and things like that. I think that one of the things we forget about is your roles as leaders in the community. What you are doing is real leadership. Can you read this, please? The Girl Scouts?
Leadership, what is it? A leader is someone who helps others do and become more than they ever thought possible. Leadership is about unlocking potential, whether individual potential or that of a group or organization. It is not about telling people what to do, but inspiring them to see what they are capable of, then helping them get there.
So that's what you're doing, right? That's what you're doing. You are the bridge from the community. What is the bridge? What is that? What is that song? Come on, you have to help me. Oh, Gesher Tsar. Right? So we are the bridge to the community. And wouldn't it be nice if somebody you have a Jewish conversation with, maybe you can place them like their kids in the day school. Maybe they need that. Maybe they need the help of Jewish Family Services. Probably the people that you're doing actual Jewish conversations with, those people maybe with greater giving ability. I think every gift is important, right? But if you're going to give $25 or $50, and you have other people that are going to give, over $1,000, maybe, that's where you and Eileen and Max will decide who you're going to meet with and speak with. But my point
Mark,
is,
I have to tell you that you have to start somewhere, and I can tell you this from both myself, and I can tell you this from another donor in another organization that I'm in. That when people get moved, they make a different statement. So years and years ago, I was married to somebody who didn't support the Federation. And so I gave $12 a year, and then it went to 18, and then it went to 36. But then when I got involved in Federation, it went to that over 1,000.
right.
Right? So it changed over time. And so even those smaller donors, if we don't connect with them, they aren't going to be part of us later. And I had somebody last year at one of my events for the disability community who had previously given $40. And at this particular event, the story that he heard that day, he said, this is where I need to be giving. And so it went from 40 to 1,000. I mean, it's like, that's like not on me.
What's this Jewish campaign thing all about? I think you should answer the question yourself, why do I do it? Why do I give to the annual Federation campaign every year, right? Why should I ask others to give to the annual Federation campaign? These are things that I think you should be able to answer. I also believe you should probably put your gift in, before you go out and have a Jewish conversation. I'm not the expert, but just be able to say, you know what, Ed, I've already made my commitment, and this year I've decided, me and my family, my wife is a Lion of Judah, and I'm giving you the major gifts level, and I would ask you to do the same. It's a lot easier to say, Ed, consider being a major giver. I don't know about me yet, I haven't quite decided, things like that, right? Qualities, what are you looking for in the people that you're going to do it with, in terms of who are you going to talk to, right? And I would think that you better know the donor, right? What is their background? What is their interest? What do they care about? Steve, anything that you want, I can provide you with a copy of the whole presentation. How do you do it? Why can't we do it alone? Right? You could do it, and you probably could do it alone. But isn't it better when we share the responsibility, because you're giving all these other ladies and gentlemen an opportunity to do this mitzvah of asking others to do a mitzvah? But where do we do it? Again, I'll get to in a few minutes. Like I said before, number one, in Israel, overlooking the Haas Promenade in the Old City, right? If we don't have that, maybe in the kindergarten room at the Jewish Day School, if I see you there dropping off your kid or nephew, right? Sorry, you know what I mean. I was your nephew, and I happen to be there dropping off my son. Well, what can't we just meet there in an empty room, right? Or maybe in the the Federation building or somewhere quiet or your house. But let's talk about qualities of leadership or something. Again, and I know I'm just kind of moving on. Good leaders know themselves. They understand and they're committed. They know what they don't know everything. I certainly don't know everything, and we have Max. you have Eileen, you have other people that have been doing it for a long time. So know your Jewish resources. Know where to go. If somebody says, you know what, I do have a cousin here in Ann Arbor, they really could use some help from Jewish Family Services. Well, know who to talk to and follow up, right? You hate to talk to somebody once a year, right? Look, that time of year again, you want to meet again, right? I always think you want to really develop the donor, right? So you're making yourself a better Jewish conversationer. I don't know what the word is. You can all say solicitor, so Jewish, conversationer. Leaders are not afraid to fail. I've failed plenty of times. And really, how do we measure success, right? I mean, what is success in terms of us, right? It's giving people an opportunity to talk to us, to tell about us. In baseball and business, there are three types of people. Those who make it happen, those who watch it happen, and those who wonder what happened. So you are the people that make it happen, right? You are the people who are giving other people an opportunity to what? Not only give, but maybe be involved in the Ann Arbor Jewish Federation. I think that, oh sorry, slide please. Not to suck up, not to suck up. Coach Harbaugh says, satisfied is a word I'm never going to use. It's a word I don't associate with football. We are never satisfied. So is anybody satisfied with their annual campaign? Is anybody satisfied with the number of donors? Is anybody satisfied with the program that we have? Of course not. Does anybody love our campaign professionals? Yes, of course, yes. But other than that, I mean, it's kind of talking about knowing your audience too. Do you know what I mean? In terms of like motivating your audience, things like that. Is anybody hot in here? I mean, I'm from Florida, I'm sorry. And you don't want to pander to your audience and things like that. But at some point, knowing your audience, motivating your audience, it's important. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had this on. All right. Well, I had my short sleeve one, but I wore it all day yesterday and it smelled a little bit. So now I feel like I'm part of the team. All right.
Mark.
Go. Also, yes, ma'am. I would love to come over for Rosh Hashanah, yes.
While you're undressing, I'm going to digress. One of the biggest things that I'm hearing the last few years, and I'm not averse to hearing why I'm not giving and why I'm lowering, is that people want to give more to individual organizations, particularly Jewish Family Services, which Steve's on the board. We do a lot of volunteer work. They are an unbelievable organization. Other than the comment to people, we have to support and uphold the whole Jewish community. Can you give us any advice on what to say? I want to give individually. I want to give to this organization.
I usually say, first of all, like I mentioned this before, the idea of communal giving, when we can take money that we've raised communally and direct it to Houston, to the Jewish community immediately. We can't do that if we give all of our money directly to the Jewish Family Services, because honestly, for me, I want to give all of our money to Israel, right? I want to give our money to Jewish Family, the JDC, the Joint Distribution, the Jewish Agency for Israel, because that's what I really motivates me, and that's what I care about. But I respect the fact that, although my grandmother is not in the assisted living facility, or that my kid doesn't go to the day school, I respect that being a part of the Jewish community, that we are part of this family, that we have to take care of all of us, right? And I think that it's hard to learn that lesson. And I know that you have different ways, like communities are always trying to figure out how people can designate a little bit of their gift, or a portion of their increase, where really the math kind of ends up the same at the end of the day or something like that. But I think that what's important is that we do it better than anybody else because we take care of our entire Jewish family, the people in Ann Arbor, and the money we raise in Ann Arbor. We'll talk about this product. What was the campaign last year? About how much?
1.3.
Professionals can't answer, all right? About 1.3 million. Of that percentage, how much stayed locally and how much went overseas? About 80-20, right? So generally about 80-20. So fine, so you can say that 80% of the money raised that we do stays here in Ann Arbor, taking care of Jewish Family Services, taking care of the day school, working with the synagogues, the other programs, things like that. I mean, again, knowing your donor, so if I'm talking to that donor who I know going in, that's what I'm focusing on about what we stay locally. The vast amount of the money that we raise here in Ann Arbor is for those programs. I mean, it's hard, right? I mean, and I don't some special designated giving to Jewish Family Services or something like that. I understand that. But I have to think that being able to see what we do, and even my telling some of the stories to you about what's going on in Israel, and what's going on in the Ukraine now, and what's going on in Houston, and all over the Jewish world, to help you, because plenty of people on the board in Tampa are like, why, we can barely support our local organizations. Why are we giving money? Well, because we're part of this 150 federations and 300 and something network communities that raise about what? About $900 million annually to take care of the Jewish people. And again, You know, that's who we are. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question because, again, it's identifying the donor. What Sam is important to Sam is what I'm going to be focusing on. If Sam really cares about Jewish Family Services, I'll get right to you, sir. You've been a lawyer a lot longer than me. You don't have to raise your hand. You just tell me let's talk, and then but my point is,
object.
objection. All right. On the steps of where I drove by yesterday, he made the announcement, and I think he said after he talked about the Peace Corps, and he said, and I quote, "And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your federation can do for you, but what you can do for your federation." I don't know if you caught that part of the speech. All right. We talk about dedication and commitment. I don't have to say a word about this, right? Right? You look at the line of Judah pin, and how many line of Judah women are there? 70? How many?
70, well,
Two?
no, that's not,
No, major givers, maybe. How many line of
There's
Judah?
20 lines of Judah.
Right? So you wear that pin, you see this going around, you don't know who they are, but you just know that they are committed, right? They care, they're committed. Not only do they give, they wear this pin to show how proud they are about who we are. Okay. All right, talk about dedication, right? Go ahead. First they ignore you, like we talked about, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win, right? It is a process of identifying those people, trying to get them to an event, trying to understand who we are and what we do. And only, I'm sorry, what did you say your name was, the man?
Carol.
Carol, I only like what Carol said before, only when they truly understand who we are will they really give to their full ability, right? And really be a part of the community, so hopefully they'll be the next presidents of all the organizations. I used to use this slide, you know, during the Olympics. When you talk about somebody with commitment, right? You talk about somebody with focus. Besides him selling out, trying to race a fake shark, you know, during Shark Week. You know, I think about Michael Phelps, and you think about, you just see him.
You know he went to UN.
Sweet! I did not know that. Are you kidding me on that? Woo! I totally knew that. I totally knew that. What? Did he really go to UN?
Yeah.
He did my homework.
He trained here.
Trained here. Yeah, that's right. All right, I showed you this slide.
Now
Talking
he
about
does.
this.
Now he does.
All right, and I think most importantly, neshama, the heart and soul, right? Kind of how we feel. All right. Oh my God, more quotes. All right. Who wants to read this? Who can read this? All right, Ed.
In times of difficulty, those brave enough to stay the course will be victors in the end.
Right.
Those who
So-
stay will be victorious.
So isn't that what we were talking about in time when there's a struggle, when you can hear no, right? Even if we have a Jewish conversation and they do the same as last year, or they don't increase it as much as you want them to increase it. And even if we had a Jewish conversation and a dialogue, and they're more involved, maybe they're on the board. Isn't that a victory, right? Isn't that a victory? Now, sometimes we just hear things, right? Or see an image, and it's something that motivates us, right? Do you agree with that? I mean, again, so, I don't have, we're not connected, but, hold on one second, I don't have my
I
glasses.
probably have that.
Let's go! For donors, we're going! Right? Anybody agree with that? Right? How about you have children, grandchildren, right? How many times have we heard this, right? You can't get tears. You see the animals coming, you see the child, you see the circle of life, right? This is what do we call it? The door of the door, right from here, right? Okay. You get the message? Now, hold on. All right, you get the message? I mean, I think if you see an image, it talks about kind of who we are, right? But these are not necessarily Jewish images, right? But when we see Jewish images as well, right? Can anybody, you know, don't you feel special when you go to Israel, you see an airplane with the Star of David on it? Don't you feel special when you see, you know, my wife asked me, like, we have this new JCC in Southampton, they have the flag. I'm not sure, do I salute it? Do I put it over my heart every time I see it? You know, and I'm not sure, I mean, obviously I love our country, and I'm, you know, but when you see this picture, what's this picture from? Of course, the Six-Day War, right? These three soldiers in the Six-Day War, right? I was there that day. It was 1986. I was studying abroad. Sharansky got free. We've been to the Kotel, if you've been to Israel. I was so far back, I was so shoved in, and they picked him up, and they were screaming. I can remember the tears coming, and they were screaming, "Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael." And they carried this little man who was obviously the face of Soviet Jewry, you know, to the wall, and I was thinking to myself, like, you know, we are part of something really special, right? This is our Jewish family. Now, I understand that you can't take all of this with you. I can't, you know, maybe listen to a little Jewish music, you know, on the way to, you know, where it's going. But do you understand what I mean? Like, you know, you see the star from, you know, the Holocaust, right? And doesn't something, you know, make you sit up a little bit more? And doesn't you say to yourself, in the back of your head, never again, right? You see this nonsense going on in Charlottesville, and you know that we are the voice of the Jewish community, right? We are the voice of the Jewish people. That's who we are, right? So when I talk about Neshama, I think that doing what we do in terms of empowerment training, it's about 20% what you know, knowing the donor, knowing your product, knowing kind of the way to make the ask, right? We'll talk about that. But Ed, you've got to do this. I'm telling you, you have to make this gift, right? Versus, Ed, would you really consider joining me as a major giver in the Ann Arbor, right? So that's 20%. I believe 80% is really from what's inside, right? It's your dedication, it's your commitment, it's your neshama. And that's why the people who aren't here today, in terms of whatever their reasons are or not, you have to be able to somehow get to them in some way and get them touched or motivated, because otherwise, these what do you want to call them? We don't call them cards. The donors, what do we call them? You know,
the people who
the
we
people
are
we're speaking
reaching
with,
out
right?
to, our community
Right?
members.
They sit on your desk, right? They sit on your desk, right? Then you know Steve's going to call you. You put them over so you don't see them. You put some other papers underneath them, right? They get dust on them. Steve calls you, you come back out. I'm like, Steve, I'm on it, right? But unless we feel it inside, empowered to really go forward and do these things, we're going to be missing out, right? Okay. In terms of what you talked about before, let's just answer some of these questions for a second, right? And again, why make a gift to the annual commitment? Why make an annual commitment to the Ann Arbor Jewish Federation? Right? Why ask others to give Jewishly? Now remember, we're in the what? We're in the long-term business, right? So the whole idea is what you talked about, developing donors. This is not just a one-time thing. It's we're developing them as community members and people that are involved as well as givers. So what's the answer to this question? Because you better be able to answer this question to be able to say what Joyce talked about in terms of why we're here and why we're involved and why it's important to give to our joint campaign or to our communal campaign. So
I know I'm a professional, but
Say
I
whatever you
want
want.
to address some of what Joyce was talking about. And so first of all, let's just take the example of the people that you're talking about. The Jewish Family Service and our other organizations actually really rely very heavily on what we give them through the annual campaign. If we were to say to Hebrew Day School, you guys just raise the money on your own, or even to Jewish Family Services, who does have a mechanism for raising a lot of money for some of what they do, but if we were to say, okay, there's another $100,000 plus for you to raise on your own, that would be a significant challenge and would be very difficult for them. So they rely on us, and they rely on us actually to increase our giving, not to stay the same. Also, I think that in our community, the more we all raise, all our organizations raise, the stronger we are as a community. So I would encourage any donors to also give individually to these organizations. Where we don't all rise together is if they, obviously offset their giving from one to another. But this idea that we do all, we're not in competition. We all need to succeed in order for the community to succeed. And then why us as a federation? We provide an infrastructure for the community. So we've already talked about how, if a popular thing gets funded, then something else won't get funded. So, the federation sort of looks at the needs overall of the community and makes decisions that will support the broader community. But it also creates an infrastructure so that when an organization is in trouble, let's say in the past Hebrew Day School was in trouble, so Federation was able to help step in. So we as a community were able to step in. When another organization is in trouble, we can step in and help because as a community we've created this infrastructure, the underpinnings of our community. And then that brings us to a situation like Houston, where as a national system, it's a whole crisis management system in place for just such an occasion, for Harvey, for Irma, for other things that happen. And if we were not contributing to that, and all the federations weren't contributing to that, there would be, little organizations here, there, and everywhere, but there wouldn't be a really organized crisis management response.
Yeah, something to say?
So I just want to piggyback on what Eileen said. Eileen's giving sort of the practical, like the very practical response, and I think that works for a donor who's like practically minded and sort of the logistics of how this all works. And I think underneath that is also like the neshama question, which is like the way I think about it. the essence of being a Jew is that you're connected to Jews you've never seen, that you'll never meet, all over. That is, to me, like, if you boil it all down, that's what it's about. And so giving to Federation is like not only giving to the people that you see, the JFS services in front of you, which is super important, but you're reaffirming that deeply Jewish sort of essence, which is even people I will never see and never know, I am connected to. And that's what Federation allows you to do, that making direct gifts doesn't. And I think, you know, depending on who you're talking to, it feels like connecting that, like, you do the practical pieces about what it makes to, like, what does it actually mean to be Jewish and how is giving to Federation sort of?
When I think of Federation, I think of community. When I think of JFS, I think of helping an individual, family or a person in crisis or, you know, needs. When I think of Hebrew Day School, I think of educating a single child or, you know, many children. But when I think of Federation, it's the collective group, and that's important.
Like the needs of the collective always outweigh the needs of the...
When I see the, when I hear on the allocations committee, the needs of individual organizations, and most people in the community don't know the whole collective group of organizations and needs that there are. And I think if they were exposed to that, they would realize the validation of what Federation is.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so real quick, Ed always makes the point, today not yet, but I'll make it. You know, we have this little thing of our 1.3 million of $500 a year.
Yep.
Who's going to take care of the Eru, if not Federation? Other point, quickly, building on other things that people have said, your perspective is so important because people say, well, you know, it's so important, these different designated gifts. People don't, if people are reminded, especially the 30-something, 40-something who don't have the historical perspective, that longitudinally, there was a time that JFS was dependent on us for a lot more than 5 or 10% of the budget. And there have been times where many different things that parts of the community that are doing well most of the time on their own were not, and really were dependent at times of unplanned crisis. So sometimes it's important to say, you know, dig a little bit in history or hang around long enough, you're going to see everything comes around again.
Yes, sir.
So I just want to add, I think all those are great comments. I think what Eileen said, also we could add that it creates a structure for something new to come into our community to grow. But I do want to throw out the elephant in the room because I had one of my campaign discussions, community discussions, I corrected that, last year, where it was an average donor for Ann Arbor, wanted to just direct that donation to JFS because they believed in the refugee resettlement and were very upset with the settlements in Israel. What they know about the settlements in Israel, I don't know. And I think that, and this was not a millennial, but I think the millennials, we have to deal with that issue more, as well as our generation. And I think that, I don't know if you can help us try to get past that elephant in the room.
I thought you were talking about the fact that I was really a Florida Gator fan as the elephant in the room.
No.
My point is this. If I am going to speak with a Jewish communal member, as Steve did last year, I think it would behoove me to maybe talk a little bit to Eileen and to Max to get some more information. Certainly talk to Steve. So if I know going into what your, to that person, that person is going to be spoken to this year, you have a little bit of background and more tools and information. Maybe if that person is worthy of a meeting with maybe you as well as a professional to talk a little bit.
Steve too.
Well,
I mean, because of the JFS issue.
Well, because if somebody's really going to want to fight you, and we'll talk about objections in a minute, and again, I only have 45 more minutes, sometimes people object just to object, right? Carol wants to work with me a little bit, Bernard wants to just a little bit, they just want to object to hear themselves talk, right? I'm all, again, when we talk about why people give, I want to give Bernard, what's important to you? Is it Israel? Is it the day school? Is it Jewish Family Services? Give me your number one. Is it your grant? I mean, what is your hot button in terms of what's important to you?
Well, locally, I would say the JCC.
Okay, so if I know that about you going into it, you know, if I call you Mr. Bernard, I can
Bernie.
use Bernie. If I know that going to Bernie, if I say, Bernie, what is it about the JCC that you really care about? What are the programs that motivate you? What else would you like to see, right? I'm gonna give him those layups, right? I may not be talking about what Jennifer's talking about, because that may not be the hot point for him. Although Steve and I, we're gonna be singing, we're gonna talk about Israel, we're gonna talk about all that stuff and all those things, you know. So, I'm not sure specifically the answer in terms of the refugees, you know. I can't say to you, I have a magic answer other than we're not here supporting the government of the state of Israel and their decisions politically. We are helping all those people in Israel that live below the poverty line. Do you know that 1 out of every 5 children in Israel live below the poverty line? Do you know that still those Ethiopian Olim still need education and training to learn the language to be absorbed? Do you know that there's different kinds of aliyah, right? There's risk aliyah, like people going from, you know, the former Soviet Union, people where it's dangerous, and there's people like going from France. These are our people.
And
When
I
we look
gave
at
them
what?
a relative, I gave them that.
Right. I mean, so
example.
that's what we're taking care of. I mean, people from Buenos Aires and people from those are us. They look just like you and me, Carol. People going from the former Soviet Union, Ethiopia, they don't look like us, right? I mean, I don't mean bad by that, but they come from a third world country, right? It's different. So I talk about that. And if I still can't get to them, there's no need to argue, right? And if they really want to give, and they want to give substantially, am I fighting over that $180 gift to Jewish Family Services? I don't know. Maybe I just turn it over to Eileen. They want to give $25,000 to Jewish Family Services? We can figure it out. That they can give $25,000 to Jewish Family Services, right? So I guess that's knowing you're doing. I really got to keep going because, and talking about knowing who we are, you have to think about where we are locally. You know, and I talk about crisis in the world. You know, there's issues. I mean, literally, there was a bombing this week again in London. I mean, it's craziness what's going on in the world. I think in Israel, thank God we don't hear about. You know, I mean, there are things going on, but we're not fundraising on the back of crisis, which I think is sometimes it's necessary, but it's not where I want to be. Right? I want to talk about fundraising on all the great things that we do. Right? For Jews in Paris, for Jews in the Ukraine, which still have issues. Texas and Florida. I mean, I added that this week. I mean, can you imagine? I'm talking about my own state and the Jewish community. We'll talk about that. We'll keep going. Right, doing your homework is what we talked about. We have a product, right? I mean, I think it's a very special product. I think it's an amazing product to be a part of. But we have a product, right? And I think that you need to know a little bit about your Jewish community, where the money is raised. Now, I don't think you need to get, what do you call it, caught in the weeds or something like that. Because if that person that you're talking to back there says, I want to know about this detail and that detail and what percentage of the, you know, goes for overhead and all that stuff. Well, maybe you call a timeout, you have a nice Jewish conversation, and you pivot and they meet with Eileen or they meet with, you know, one of the campaign, you know, presidents. To sell your product, you know your product. How are we responding to events in Israel? The positive events. What's going on with Jews in our own town in Ann Arbor, right? What programs and services does the Ann Arbor Jewish Federation deliver? What resonates with our donors in Ann Arbor? And these are some of the things I think you need to know. And again, you can get all these numbers. You already said this before, the 2017 annual campaign, $1.3 million, right? How many donors were part of that? 860 or so, right? There's 2,500 or so Jewish households, which means about 8,000 Jews. I guess some is young, some is old. So we're capturing 860. Probably a much better percentage than many communities. Probably others out there that are capable of what? Just being asked, right, to get involved and to donate. All we have to do is, she left, but we have to find them, you know, identify them, engage them, and then hopefully, again, the local and the overseas, right? The major givers in the line of Judah, 73. Your endowed foundation in terms of $6.3 million. Again, these aren't a lot of details, but these are a few things I think it's important for you to understand and know and appreciate. Just talking about Israel, although an ocean may separate us, it will never divide us. In terms of the Israel allocation, when I tell people, we can talk about it in two different ways. You have the Jewish Agency for Israel, JAFI or the Saknut, and you have the JDC. You also have ORT that you mentioned, ORT, which does amazing things for students all over the world, hundreds of thousands of Jewish students. But we take our money and it goes to this national pool, and hundreds of millions of dollars goes to the Jewish Agency for Israel. The Jewish Agency for Israel is responsible for bringing Jews from Argentina, from France, over 1 million Jews from the former Soviet Union. We talked about the Jewish refuseniks, and they still come. They don't come as many, obviously, But although France the last few years has been the highest aliyah in years, they still come. And the Jewish Agency for Israel is responsible for bringing them into Israel, helping them be absorbed into the Jewish community and taking care of them in Israel, right? That's the Jewish Agency. The JDC is, we are here to take care of Jews all over the world. In 70 countries and in Israel, all over the world, we make life better for the elderly, for the children, for those in need, for that woman who has not left her apartment in 5 years. We make life better for them. We teach them in terms about what it means to be Jewish, what it means to have that Jewish neshama, what it means to celebrate the holidays and be a part of our Jewish mishpacha, right? That's who we are, the JDC. And that's the amazing work of what you're talking about. And I hope you can get on one of those trips and go, you know, a lot of people are going to Cuba now because it's easy, you know, but go to the former Soviet Union and walk up those flights of stairs and go to the Chesed centers, you know, and see what's going on. And when you go to Israel, see the Olim, because, you know, the Ethiopian children that are born there, they're great. They serve in the army, right? They speak the language. They're part of the Israeli culture. But their parents and grandparents still, you know, and I've been to Ethiopia. I've been to Addis. You know, I've seen it, you know, Rick Hoge is a great speaker. If you ever get him, you know, involved, you know, and your programs, the hand-to-hand schools, what is that?
That is a bilingual Jewish Arab schools. It's actually a chain of schools, but we support the school in the Galilee. And it's changing, I mean, again, the descriptions are in here, but it's just, it's changing.
Hand in hand, right?
Pardon?
Hand in hand.
It is hand in hand.
Sorry, hand in hand.
That's all right. Mark was in on
Typo, I went to my email. The Lekep Israel, what's that?
Max?
Lekep is the National Food Bank for Israel, every year rescuing hundreds of millions of tons, not hundreds of millions, but tens of millions of tons of food from restaurants, hotel chains, and they redistribute that to hundreds of thousands of people in Israel. And in our partnership community itself, we have there is a dedicated field to grow fresh produce to help offset some of the rescued produce to be able to meet the growing need.
Right, so if you're really involved in Jewish Family Services, like going back to that person we talked about, or that person that talked about Israel and resettlements and things like that, it's good to have some basic knowledge about, look at all these other programs that we do. Look at all these people that we touch. And I know that I feel like I'm only touching the surface of it because I don't have that much time, and you know, a deal is a deal in terms of how much time we can take of yours. But understanding those in terms of the seniors that we take care of in the former Soviet Union, and the children that we take care of in Israel and the former Soviet Union, and all over the Jewish world. You know, if you've been to Buenos Aires and you see what, you know, thankfully things are a little bit better there, and see what we've done. I mean, that's the part of the Jewish family I think is the most special, how we touch people all over the world. Again, just a little bit more about Israel, children at risk, the Jewish summer camps that we support, humanitarian programs for, I guess, what was victims of terror, and now still is victims of terror, but it's thankfully not as much, school safety programs. I mean, even again, I bet you for the holidays here in Ann Arbor, that you have an additional cost at all of your Jewish centers just because of Charlotte, and because of everything else, right? Who's going to take care of that unless it's the Jewish community? I was in Ashdod, like I told you, after Cousin Stanley. And this is the absorption center. My Hebrew is rak kacha kacha, rak tzad, but I do speak the international language of popsicle.
I was going to say, all right.
That's very important. And the only thing I can tell you is that this is about what you talked about before, about the faces that you never see. These kids are from, you know, they're from all over the Jewish world, all over the world, excuse me, and they were brought here to the absorption center. Some from the former Soviet Union, some from South Africa, some from France. And this is where they are. And what was amazing was that the first day, they were so happy that I brought them popsicles. On the second day, the little kids brought me a list of like, Stein Limon, watermelon. So, you know, we're whatever it was. And you know, these are the kids who were sleeping literally for weeks in the, what do you call it, the shelters with their mother. The fathers, they still send up to the room because there's not enough room for everybody to sleep in the shelters. You know. The Ukraine, we talked about that and all the things going on in the Ukraine. All right, back to the kind of the toughest part. What is the goal of making the appointment? Can anybody tell me what's the goal? The goal of making the appointment is what? Making the appointment. Not closing the card, not getting the gift from the donor. The goal of the appointment. How do we do that? Well, have your calendar with you. Do not call me to make an appointment with me when you're in the car on your cell phone, right? Because Okay, I mean, actually, I can meet with you next Tuesday. That's great. I don't have my calendar in front of me. I'll get back to you on that. Come on, please, for goodness sakes, right? So the goal of making the appointment is make the appointment. Make sure you suggest a place or two. How about I come over to your house, you know, on Friday afternoon? How about you want to meet me for a coffee? There's a really quiet place. You know that place in the arcade. What's the name of it? That's my favorite one.
Comment.
I'll meet you there because it's around, and I know that you drop off your kids. What about the day school or the kindergarten, you know, over there? All right, have a few places, have an opportunity. You know, sometimes they won't answer their phone, they won't respond to a text. I like the old way of actually calling them. Sometimes it's okay to see you in person. If I see Steve professionally, Steve, hey, I really have the honor of being able to speak to you this year at the annual Federation campaign. Instead of calling you or trying to text you, is there some time that you and I can meet, you know, next week? You tell me the time is good for you. I'm coming to your office. I'm coming to your house. That would be great. If you'd like to do it, you know, and make the appointment. If you're going to talk to the husband, Carol, don't speak to the wife and ask about when the husband can meet. Talk to the husband, right? I think it's just clear that you want to make an appointment. If you're talking to the wife, then make an appointment with the wife, right? I think that's the goal of making the appointment, is making the appointment. Why are you calling? We're calling this year to ask you to talk about your involvement in the Jewish annual campaign, to talk about what's important to you in our Jewish Federation. Certainly, we'd like to talk about your gift to the annual campaign, but it's really here to talk about what's important to you, what's going on in your life and your family, maybe how we can help you, if that's the right person to say. We talk about to tell you all about all the amazing things that we do and what's going on this year, and hopefully you'll make the appointment. Any other best practices quickly relative to that? No.
I mean, I think you said something so important that is so simple that you know, to the extent that, you know, been involved in some solicitation of that, it's usually been about, it hasn't led. I mean, it needs to lead. My conversation with the people I'm calling needs to be not about your gift. It's about getting together, talk about the community.
I want to tell you about all the great things that we do. Yeah, I am talking. No, you're right.
It's so important to emphasize.
I'm happy. I'm looking forward to talking to you. It really means a lot. Can't we just do this over the phone? You know what? We can just do it over the phone, but it's not the same. And also, I promised. What that?
Yes.
I got it right. Finally, give me some of that. And Steve, I was going to meet with you. I promised, and I don't want to listen to them tell me. And I promised. I think he told me that I gotta, you know. So it would mean a lot to me if we can do this in person.
We can do it.
We can do it in person. Okay. Remember, you are the gesture. You are the bridge between the prospects or the donor and our Jewish community. The conversation part, and again, we've been going for a while in terms of tools and techniques. This is what I call in softball, right? What are the things that you care about, Carol? What's important to you in our Jewish community in Ann Arbor? What would you like to see in terms of more growth? What do you think that we do great and we could work on? What's important to you in terms of why you give Jewishly? I know that you've been involved. I know you've been aligned with Judah for I think 10 years, Eileen told me. Or I know that your children grandchildren go to the day school. So give them the questions that you know that's important to the donor, right? So, and I said, what's important to you? And Israel's important to you. Well, I don't want to talk about Israel. Let's talk about blah, blah, blah. So, of course, you're not helping the conversation, right? You want the softballs, right? You want them to start opening up. What do people love to do? They want to talk about themselves. They want to talk about their family, right? They want to talk, you know, about things that are important to them, right? So you're basically giving them the softballs and somehow directing the conversation. And if you're telling a story, and we could do 2 hours like Ray does on storytelling, all you're doing is talking about what's important in your family and trying to make the connection to the Jewish community. Why it's important that we give. Why it's important. And again, remember, you're not an expert. I'm no expert in this. But if you have the neshama part, you know what? I'm not great at this, Carol. All I can tell you is that I know this is really important. I am honored to be able to talk to you. And I have the mitzvah of being able to speak with you. Not that you have the mitzvah to give. That's a different story, right? In different ways. Because if Ed and I have been doing business together and we're professional colleagues, him for 50 years as a lawyer and me for 40 years as a lawyer, maybe we have a different conversation. You know what, Ed? I know that you've been involved for a long time. Or Mark, I know you've been involved for a long time. I know you've been successful. In fact, I think I sent you 4 or 5 cases this last year. I think it's time for you to join me as a major giver. I know you've been giving to him. So that may be okay, but you better know your donor, because that's okay. Because Ed has sent me $100,000 worth of business this past year, so that's okay, right? And if Steve is my colleague and all that stuff, that's a different story. For most people, you know, we're just here to ask them what's important to them, right? And when they object, we'll talk about objections for a minute, but we're there to listen, and we're there to share, and we're really talking about it. I know that most of you will still want to do this over the phone. It is the easiest way, it is a way out, but to really give them meaning, and to really grow your federation in terms of other people here. So if I can come next year, you know, we have 35 people in the room or something like that, you know, I think that's what we're talking about. At some point, you have to just, I don't like to say shut up, right? It's not very polite. But you have to be quiet, right? You have to be quiet and listen, right? Tell me about what's important to you. Be quiet and listen, right? Tell me about your family and your Jewish story. Be quiet and listen. Oh, let me tell you about my story, blah, blah, blah. Because maybe they haven't been to Israel 10 times, and maybe they haven't been to the former Soviet Union, maybe they don't know any of those things. About engaging and remembering. And at some point, you have to make the ask, right? And when people always ask me, when do you make the ask, right? I'll talk about the slide in a second. I think it just depends. Usually I like to say, you know what, Steve, let's talk about the community first, then we'll talk about the campaign. And they're okay with that. Sometimes they just want to know what you're going to ask them for, right? And it's overwhelming. So I can say this, you know, I mean, this year I'm going to ask you to be, you know, I know that you've been very involved and have been giving quite a bit. This year I'm going to ask you to join me as a Lion of Judah, right? But let's just table that for now, and let's just talk about it and come back to it. So maybe what I call it's out of the air is, you know, is clear, right? In terms about the personal story, I would say, talk about your personal story in terms of what the donor is involved with and what the donor cares about. If you can know, and that's why you want to talk about the prior donors, you want to do a little bit of homework, you want to reach out to Max and Eileen and your professionals and your campaign professionals, campaign cheers. Again, there is no right or wrong answer other than being sincere and saying, listen, this is really important to me. I'm doing something that I really believe in, that I really love and care about, you know, and I am in the Tikkun Olam zone, and I'm, you know, really happy to be a part of this. And we can just have, how many of us talk, where do most of us talk? Right? Honestly, where do most of us talk? We talk about the surface. Ed, how was your morning? Great. I don't even care what shit we shoot. I don't care what you say. I mean, I care personally. But most people, we just hear it, right? And we push it off, right? But if you can have a talk below the surface. Carol, when's the last time people really said, what really is important to you? What do you love about being Jewish? And what do you love about the Jewish community? And as we're approaching Rosh Hashanah, you know, our Jewish New Year, you know, what is it that means that you've been involved for so many years? I mean, I'm guessing, what are you? You're in your 50s, so you've been involved for 30 years, or 40 years, or 70 years, or 60 years, or whatever it is, right? And when do people really have those substantive conversations, right? Even with our own spouses, I mean, or our best friends. You know, I think it's really special that we get to have this opportunity. Okay, let me keep going.
Can I just add one thing, like what you're saying about this personal story, it'd be like, and we're going to try and provide you this information, but to have ideas in your head for stories that bring to light things that are important to the donors. So if it's something related to JFS or something related to the film festival at JCC or a Hebrew Day School story, to have sort of a file in your head of different stories that you can access that are personal to you, maybe, or that you've heard that you can then bring to.
You all have those stories.
Yeah.
If my story is this, I'm young, I'm new to Ann Arbor, I just started working as a lawyer at an Ann Arbor firm, and I just want to meet other professionals. Well, you tell me about that professional group. And picking berries is fine, because if I'm talking to you while we're talking, we go have a beer together or something like that, and then maybe the next event is a little bit more of a community event or a Jewish event. That's fine. So that's a good story, right? So again, you want them to feel connected. You want them to feel like they're a part of a community. You want them to make, by their gift, they are making our Ann Arbor Jewish Federation better, that we're helping Jews here, and we're helping Jews all over the world. Again, I feel like I'm rushing a little bit, but I want to finish on time. We talked about sharing Federation activities. Again, if you know your donor is really involved in the JCC, or they have their kids in kindergarten, you can talk about those activities, those programs, what we support relative to their interests. I think that's really important. Again, if they're really interested in Israel and overseas, we talk about that. The ask, it's harder to ask people for money, but it's harder to turn away the needy. Some people have a hard time with this ask business. I always say, if you ask in a polite way, Ed, would you really consider joining me this year and giving a gift of $1,000 to the annual Federation campaign? Right? Right? Would you consider joining me as a Lion of Judah? Would you consider raising your gift to $180? I'm not saying that everybody can give $365 a year, but most people can. If they're professionals that work, right? We should consider giving $1 a day. You know, or there's a young leadership thing called the Ben Gurion Society. It's nice. It's $1,000, something like that. So a certain level. People always say, well, how do you ask for the increase and things like that? Again, that's a community decision how you make. You know, you're asking everybody for an increase. If somebody gave me $25 or $50, I wouldn't bother with the 20% increase. I would just ask them to give $1 a day, or $180 or something like that. I mean, that's my opinion. If I'm giving $1,000, I'll be giving $1,000 and Steve was talking to me, maybe instead of saying to me this year, Mark, would you give $1,200, would you consider increasing your gift by 20%? Or by $200. You're talking about the increase part of it. And that doesn't sound so bad, right? I spent more of that at the Emden, you know, just the other day. You want to buy this for $40? I nothing else. So, remember, it's Nike, it's beautiful, champion material, whatever it is. So, in terms of that.
Mark, I really appreciate from the bottom of my heart how you customized your presentation with the maize and the blue. You know, we've seen a zillion motivational speakers and they don't know what city they're in.
Well, first of all, and I thank you because my nephew, who my sister is so nervous that he's homesick. He doesn't seem homesick to me. And my cousin from Chicago are here, so I got to have dinner with them. I took my son to the big house. I'm walking on shorts with my initial on it. I mean, so, all right. Before, again, I get to go to 5 after because we took the break. But does anybody have any best practices in terms of making the ask or getting the increase? I think, why do we need more money? Ed, you better have an answer to that question. Why are you asking me for more? I mean, the needs are greater. Well, what needs are you talking about?
Well, I had something that worked.
We have any schnapps, by the way, because it's...
I had something that worked really, really well last year. I was going to people and I did it on email, which is, I know, at the bottom of the rung, but I knew they would not want to meet with me. That would piss them off. They didn't even want to talk on the phone. I could just, they're committed to giving. And they hadn't made a pledge last year. And the wife is a former head of the Hebrew Day School. And I had seen an amazing video, I think maybe at a Federation meeting, that the Hebrew Day School just put out about what they're doing. It was amazing, really well-produced video. So I sent them the link, and I said, I think you will be so moved at what the Jewish community is doing right now and the legacy.
And how'd that work?
Like instant and a lot of money.
But what you're talking about, I think, is important. You are making, what's the word, a shanda? If you call me only one time, Ed, if I'm a lawyer and you're calling me only one time a year, shame on you, right? Which, never, after what Steve told me about you, I would never say that, especially on tape. But my point is, send me an article that you find interesting. Invite me to a Shabbos dinner, which was beautiful, you know, at the house, right? Tell me about, if I have no place to go for Rosh Hashanah, maybe you invite me to your synagogue or the Chabad rabbi or the Hillel, this or that. You know, have some connection with me over the course of the year. There's a great event that we have coming up, this film festival. Or somebody said about music before, I don't know who's talking about music. This concert is coming up, right? So just tell me about it. Wouldn't it be nice just to have a little bit more conversation or a little bit more connection? You know, you told me, Eileen, that I could find a place for me. You better find a place for me. I don't just need to be on the board, but find a place for me. Make up a place for me, right? Something, okay?
Can I just add another?
We can do whatever, but
I think the message that I'm taking from you is it's about the donor.
Yes.
And like that, I feel like knowing something about the donor and then saying, here's something I think connects to you and what you care about.
I think that it's about two things. In terms of you in the room, for really getting to do this, understanding who we are, understanding what we do, really feeling it inside, that commitment and then the neshama part, because it's hard to ask people for money as well as give money yourself. But in terms of the asking part, in terms of the Jewish conversation part, I believe it's all about the donor. I believe really understanding their needs. Now remember, they can be educated somewhat too. Their eyes can be opened about who we are and all those things, but still it's about the donor, the different ways that you do it. If it was a young leadership person, I would do it differently. I would have a social event, you know, and I would do a little bit of peace involved in it, right? I would do a little sprinkling on the top, right? If it was, you know, kids from campus or kids from the day school at a Jewish communal event, I'd work a little bit of all of that in, right? But it's got getting them out. All right, quickly.
I was in a social event a week ago, and the person before they met us Googled us. In a social situation. I was like amazed. And I think that sometimes we think we know who these people are, and we really don't. And we should take a few minutes to Google them, because there could be something that we didn't know.
You know what, I never thought about that really. I usually say, talk to your campaign professionals about who they are.
Let me tag to that, and that is because when we talk about an increase. So we have donors who have been giving a certain amount for 10, 15, 20 years, and we cannot, number one, we can provide you only get to see on the cards that it says the last 3 years. We can tell you what their history is. So if you want to know that information, please, you should contact us. But the other thing is, there's this website, and I'll send it out, where you can just plug in the amount and the year, and then what that amount would be this year. And, you know, it's not just that the needs are greater, it's that things cost more. So if you were very committed to giving to the Federation in 1995, $1,000, wouldn't you still want to have $1,000 coming to the, but it's not $1,000 anymore. And that's actually it's not that you're not giving enough, it's just that what you were giving all those years ago isn't worth as much today. And so that's another thing that we can help you
So
with.
very fast, just playing back on what you said, you shouldn't be once a year. What I do with the people that I'm in contact with is a couple times a year, I send them an email and I say, just wanted to show you what your money went to.
Yes.
Here's a
Nice.
video.
Like after.
Here's a picture.
Yes.
Here's
Afterwards,
a
not
this.
before.
That's a great idea.
Just showing you.
No, that's a great idea.
Great.
I'm gonna
Thank
steal
you,
that if you
Ed.
don't mind. I'm gonna take that, I'll give you full credit, Ed. But that's good, because can you imagine talking about a program or something going on in Israel, sending me a picture during the course of the year and saying, part of the money that we raised with your pledge and commitment made a difference for this Jewish family in Israel.
Yeah.
It changes the mindset. It's not that, oh, you're calling me to ask for money. It's, oh, you're giving me information.
In addition to, I think it's a great idea that we've been hearing about for months and we started doing, I know, we just, thank yous.
Yeah, thank you.
There's something, I don't know if you're familiar with this, these are called pins, and there's something called paper. You know, we always say you're supposed to thank the donor 7 times. Whether they want to be thanked in the newspaper, they want to be thanked in public, they want to do whatever. But I always tell people, you know, I have cards with my firm. You know, it's marketing too, you know. Dear Ed, just thank you for the time, you know, I really, really enjoy getting to know you a little bit better. It's like 8 words, right? A happy and healthy new year, that's whatever, that's 12 words, and boom, you stick it in the mail, right? I mean, it's amazing. But so let's keep going because just a word about the objections. When people object, they object for different reasons. One, there's a sincere objection, right? It is something sincere like you talked about, right? I mean, to me, I'm not saying that it's silly about I'm not giving because of the Israeli government, right? I mean, some people will say to me, in 1974, Samuel so-and-so spoke to me in a way that I didn't like, so therefore I'm not giving.
I've had that one too.
God's sake. That's why Samuel Al-Shalom is no longer with us. He's still on the Federation board. So there's just different kinds of objection, right? Now, I always say to you, tackle the objection, not the donor. I have to tell you, that was the stupidest thing I've ever heard somebody say. That's not the way to handle it, right? It's much better to say, you know what, Ed? I feel the same way you do. Right? I really am frustrated with some of the things with the government of Israel. More so with our government. No, I'm just kidding. But I really feel the same way. But I know, because I understand where the money goes and what we do, right? I feel the same way you do. I felt that way, but now I learned a little bit more. I feel, I felt, I found. You know, those are tips that they all trained us with, right? But the point is that if it's a legitimate objection, I say, you know what, that's a really good point. And I really never thought about that. Or, I feel the same way as you do, to some extent that's the same way, but this is why I still give. If it's really a problem, then I think you just gotta finish your conversation, take a time out, pass it on to your professional, and then let them meet with it and handle it, right? I mean, again, if this person has got a great capacity for involvement or for giving, fine. If this person has been giving $25 for 20 years in Arbor Federation and they're never going to give more, then you say thank you very much and you move on. Because what can we success? Not just by the dollars that we raise, but by the lives that we touch and the people that we engage, right? Because by getting somebody on a board, or getting somebody to have the same neshama feeling as you do, by getting them to Israel, you've done a lot for their lives, right? Not because they need food, or they need shelter, or they need something for their aging parent or for a child, but you're really doing something for them, right? Because work is important for me. I like being a lawyer, I like helping people, but I don't feel like I'm changing the world as being a lawyer, right? I feel like we change the world, our Jewish world, by all of what we do in terms of who we are and all those things. I mean, I think there's something special to be able to come into a room, to be able to spend a few hours with you, and to be able to walk out. Some of you, I hope, learned a little bit. Some of you, I hope, were engaged a little bit. Some of you maybe even were bored a little bit. Only a little bit, that's okay. But my point is that if we think about who we are and all the amazing things that we do, and you go out a little bit more energized, and you make a commitment to these, you know, to your campaign chairs and your professionals, that you're going to go out there and get other people involved and touch their lives, really give them the opportunity of the mitzvah, you're doing a great thing.